In another move to rid women of any responsibility for their actions or life choices, it turns out that banks are now sexist. Your bank's pink tax. Women pay nearly 20% more in bank fees than men do. When it comes to overdraft fees and other bank charges, women are forking over nearly 20% more than men, according to findings from Stash, a banking and investment app that tracked the bank transactions of more than 500,000 users. Male Stash users pay $182 a year in bank fees and penalties for things like late payments, ATM visits, and account minimums, while women Stash users pay $214 for the same services, an 18% difference. Stash CEO Brandon Krieg attributed a steep disparity in check bounce fees paid to the fact that women earn less than men, making them more vulnerable to letting their account fall into the red. So the excuses are already coming out. Women are more likely to spend irresponsibly by attempting to spend money that they don't have, and they're more likely to withdraw from ATM machines that charge you a fee for the privilege. And on top of that, they are less likely to keep up with any financial obligations that they may have. Well, clearly the patriarchy did it. They earn less money, therefore something. Apparently the concept of living within your means is foreign to a large number of women. And heading on over to the actual Stash webpage where they host this information pretty much confirms this, where they state that women are hit with overdraft or non-sufficient fund charges 5 times a year compared to 4 times a year for men. Non-sufficient fund checks, or as some people will know them, bad checks or bounced checks. These things happen because people are attempting to spend money that they do not have. But of course, the excuses keep coming. Krieg also mentions in this article, think about it, if women are simply making less than their male counterparts, it could very well make them more vulnerable to these types of predatory banking fees. Women also reportedly tend to pay more for basic products and services such as personal care items, clothing, and similar items in a phenomenon called the pink tax. This would of course be an allusion to the oft-touted 77 cents to every dollar wage gap, which, as we all know by now, is a myth. Especially when it's phrased as, a woman will get paid 77 cents to every dollar that a man makes for the exact same work, which at this point we all know is a very tired non-argument that really needs to be retired, because the entire concept of the pay gap makes no allowance for things like the jobs that people work, the amount of hours that they work, levels of education, time of employment, sick time, annual leave, etc. And the pink tax is, of course, something that has been very easily and repeatedly debunked by people such as myself online. It relies on never comparing like-for-like products, and then declaring that objectively different things cost different amounts of money is somehow sexism. So this entire Stash study of its users and all of the articles that you'll find around it, they are all just saying the same things in a very roundabout and politically correct way. Women are more likely to spend money that they don't have, women are more likely to spend irresponsibly, women are more likely to overdraw money and overpromise money, and this is all somehow tied into the giant conspiracy theory that is the patriarchy assertion, because it's all signs of sexism or something, somehow. So this of course got me wondering, what exactly is the overall societal financial situation when it comes down to gender? Well, apparently, despite the fact that there are more women in the workforce than ever, they are still paying 60% less income tax than men. To put that in a sound bite that the feminist-minded and social justice individuals would understand, For every pound a man pays in tax, a woman will only pay 40 pence. So men are paying nearly 2.5 times more into the Western social system than women do. So what is the impact on this to society? Well, there's an interesting study here, this one coming from New Zealand, and this concludes that women will withdraw more from society than they will ever pay in across the entirety of their lives. The main draw of this coming from education, healthcare, and welfare spending. A nice little quote from this paper. The data illustrated in figure 16 suggest that on average males start having positive net fiscal impact, their per capita tax revenue exceed the allocated expenditure they receive, in their early 20s. Women, on average, do not pass this break-even point until their mid-40s. This is due to a combination of lower workforce participation, higher health and education spending, higher income support, and lower direct and indirect taxation. As can be seen, the positive net fiscal impact women make from 45 to 59 never outweighs the prior negative fiscal impacts. As a result, when the large negative net impacts of the retirement years arrive, they simply add to an already negative profile. Men, on the other hand, appear to have a positive cumulative net fiscal impact from approximately 40 until 80 years of age. For these particular taxes and public expenditures, the net fiscal incidence of men is approximately 0 when cumulated over all ages. And that is a wonderful and slightly long-winded way of saying several very interesting things. One is that the average woman across the entirety of her life is a net fiscal loss for society. Meanwhile, men are basically neutral across the entirety of their life. However, if you are a man and you live beyond the age of 40 but die before 80, you will have been, on average, a net benefit for society. And since it is not uncommon for a lot of Western nations to have an average life expectancy for a male in his 70s, while it's often in the 80s for women, though please keep in mind this does vary not only by country but also by region within those countries. Basically, when it comes to a purely financial outlook, men are a net gain for society, while women are a net loss. And these sorts of figures are not uncommon. For instance, this article from the land of the Danish, being both delicious and insightful, nearly 40 years after women's entry into the labour market, there remains a surprisingly large difference in how much women and men contribute financially to the welfare state. As the welfare society is screwed up today, women are a deficit business measured throughout their lives, while men pay more for the community fund than they get out of it. A newborn Danish girl will receive on average 1.6 million Danish kroner more from the public in the form of transfers and public welfare benefits than she will contribute through taxes and fees throughout her life. For a newborn boy, it's the exact opposite. On average, he will contribute 0.6 million Danish kroner more than he will receive in his life. A difference of 2.2 million compared to the newborn girl. And of course the article goes on to list several reasons why, several of which you will recognise from things such as the wage gap myth, differences in job selection, hours worked, sick time, absentee due to children, and so on and so forth. So should it really surprise anyone that when governments introduce cuts to the welfare system, you get articles such as this one which tell you all about how women are going to be disproportionately affected? Quoting from this study talking about why women are going to be affected by this, the main reason for this is that women are heavier users of welfare benefits and public services than men. For example, 70% of tax credits and 94% of child benefits go to women. Between 2005 and 2008, 53% of housing benefit claimants were women, 22% were couples, and 25% were men. It should be noted these things are cited from Her Majesty's Treasury and the Departments of Work and Pension, which unsurprisingly means this is talking about the UK. When looking at these articles about how women are being hit with these bank fees more than men because they're more likely to spend irresponsibly, I can't help but think about all of the data that we've just looked at. The sad fact of the matter is, when you want to try to gender the financial situation of society, women are a net liability and men are the ones who are paying for it. Women are disproportionately taking out of the welfare states that the men are paying to hold up. They are disproportionately receiving healthcare spending, which men are paying for. They disproportionately benefit from education spending, which men are paying for. They disproportionately receive children in divorce cases and therefore alimony payments, which men are definitely paying for. And when they are single mothers, which is a rising trend in society, men also finance their children and their living situations. And on top of all of that, women control around 3/4 of all consumer spending. You can try and twist all of these articles out as much as you like to try to make it look like women are the victims of some sort of evil financial cabal trying to keep them oppressed in society. The fact is, most women are having their way paid for them either directly by a man in their life or indirectly by all men in society paying a disproportionate amount of tax. And we can't even hold women responsible for their own decisions. Because apparently, as time has gone on from the 1940s up until the present day, all viewpoints of women are increasing. We think that they are more intelligent, more competent, more compassionate, better than ever, and yet opinions about women's agency in society are decreasing. This is why these articles that talk about differences in spending between men and women, they have to offer every single excuse under the sun as to why women are being charged these bank fees more than men, and not a single one of those excuses includes you are trying to spend money that you do not have. You are not living within your means. It's all, well, they want to work less than men, so they do work less than men, so they earn less than men, and therefore this is all wrong and it's terrible. It's not their fault, it's not down to their life choices, it's everything else that's the problem. And they'll happily talk about how women will choose to work less, about how they don't take as lucrative jobs, how they don't work as hard or as long at those jobs. But not a single word will ever be whispered about the net benefits and welfare that women receive from society. But hey, it's really easy to have no sense of how much things cost when you're spending money that isn't really yours.